In the dynamic world of private LTE networks for utilities, it's all about a collective approach toward grid modernization solutions. Join us alongside leading utilities including Ameren, Evergy, Lower Colorado River Authority, San Diego Gas Electric, and Xcel Energy, who are driving the evolution of utility private wireless networks with Anterix. Together with our 100-plus member ecosystem and the Utility Strategic Advisory Board, we're de-risking private LTE investments. We're not just providing solutions. We're pioneering a cleaner, safer, more affordable, and secure energy future through 900 megahertz powered private LTE networks. By joining us, you're part of a force driving innovation, accelerating returns, and future-proofing the entire ecosystem. It's more than spectrum. It's about evolving together. Don't miss out. Embrace the power of collective action, ensuring a sustainable utility private LTE evolution.
To learn more, visit Anterix.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the UTC podcast. I'm UTC President and CEO Rusty Williams. I want to thank you for joining us today for this refreshed version of the UTC podcast. We're looking for ways to make this podcast more relevant and get you the information you need to know about the organization and the industry. And we'd love to hear some feedback from you. So if you got any ideas, don't be bashful about sharing your thoughts. In this month's episode, I'll be giving you a quick update on some of the key things going on around UTC, and then we'll speak with Brett Kilbourne. Many of you know Brett. Brett's the Senior Vice President of Policy and the General Counsel for UTC. And he's no stranger to many of you because he's been around the industry and is considered one of the voices for this industry around DC. So we'll bring him on here in a little bit. But first, let's talk about 2 or 3 things going on around UTC. First, we had a great conference in Mobile back in the 3rd week in May. We had a great time. We had, I think, 88 technical sessions that were presented. We had some good speakers in our general sessions. An exhibit hall full of vendors, suppliers that work to support us here in this industry. And as always, we had several social activities to provide networking opportunities for those that were there. We did hear some great feedback from those that were there that provided feedback. And with the exception of the Nats, the information, the feedback that we got was very positive. It was gnat season along the coast, and it appeared as though there were a bumper crop of them this year. But we were able to fight our way through it and was able to have a great conference. So thanks to those that were there. And we're already looking forward to next year's conference that's going to be in Long Beach, California in June. So be on the lookout for more information about that across our various media channels, and you'll see things as we release them, and you can make your plans to be there. Second thing I want to mention is we are working to finalize our fall series of regional conferences. They start right after Labor Day in early September and go all the way through early November. We've got 4 different conferences that are being scheduled. You can find all the information about these fall regional conferences at utc.org under the upcoming events. We're working really hard with the regional officers to put together a really solid program, have some great speakers and some good topics. So we encourage you to take a look and see what you think and see if you can come be a part of those. We'd love for you to be there and to bring someone with you. Help spread the word, if you will. If you're a member, whether you're a core member, utility member, or vendor member, spread the word, and we'll make these events as strong as possible for everyone that's there. The last thing I want to mention is we are working to finalize the UTC strategic plan. The strategic plan is something that historically has been done every 3 years or so, looking at what the objectives and the long-range plans are for the organization. But what happens even in businesses when companies, organizations do strategic planning, and especially if they've had one before, they just kind of take out the old one, look at it, maybe dust it off a little bit, polish it, and then put it back on the shelf, and then you're done. You can check that box. But this time we're really looking at what it is we want to do as an organization. What do we want to focus on? Where do we want to spend our resources, whether that's time or money? And so that we can accomplish what we need to as an organization to support our members and to influence the industry. So our goal is to have the strategic plan ready to present at the August board meeting, which is August the 21st. And we'll get it approved then. And then once it's approved, then we'll start rolling it out to the organization. And probably we'll start at these fall meetings I just referenced. So if you're there, I will be there. And that'll be one of the things we'll talk about is kind of the long-term plans for the organization. So I encourage you to be a part of that and be on the lookout. And if you've got any questions about these topics or anything else that's going on in UTC, you can always reach out to me. All the ways that we reach out and touch people these days, email, text, phone, any other way that you can communicate, you feel free to do that. And I'd love to hear from you. Now, as I teased at the top of the broadcast, let's kind of turn our attention now to the guest that I mentioned, Brett Kilbourne. Many of you know Brett, as I mentioned. He's been involved in the critical infrastructure utility regulatory environment for a long time, and we're glad to have him part of UTC. So, Brett, welcome to the podcast. I know you're excited to be a part, and I'm glad you're here today.
Well, thanks, Rusty. It's a pleasure to be here. Quick intro. I've been at UTC since 1998. I came over from Bell South. Basically, I focus on regulatory issues at the FCC, and then some of those issues make their way to the courts if they get appealed. And also we work with Congress to basically affect legal changes that are going on that impact telecommunications and ICT for utilities. So that's a quick rundown of me and then also my responsibilities at UTC. So yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. I look forward to our discussion.
Yeah, and again, I know there's a lot of people, not just within UTC, but across the industry, particularly inside the Beltway, that you know and worked with. And that's something that maybe a lot of people don't understand that we do, is that we do work with other groups, other associations to coordinate efforts that have, impacts to the various constituencies. If you will, talk a little bit about that, the different groups that you work with as we try to coordinate positions for these key issues that we address.
Sure. So the first organization that we usually work with are our sister energy association colleagues, and I'm thinking of the Edison Electric Institute, the American Public Power Association, and also the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association. So we interface with those folks and try and coordinate in terms of our messaging, whether it's up on the Hill or at the FCC. And a lot of times we find ourselves filing joint comments on some of these issues. And we also coordinate in terms of our efforts behind the scenes, where we share information about things that are going on, whether it's at the federal or the state level. So, we engage not only with our federal agencies, but also we work together with, other groups. And NARIC is the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. This is an organization that includes the state PUC commissioners. And so, they put together positions on various different issues, some of which should affect both energy and telecom. And so we've engaged with those folks as well in terms of their positions, but then also to try and support what they're doing in terms of trying to improve electric reliability, efficiency, et cetera, and raise awareness with them about the importance of utility ICT, and also some of the things that utilities are doing when it comes to broadband deployment. And the NARIC folks have been very supportive in terms of expanding opportunities for utilities to try and support broadband deployment into some of these unserved areas. So those are some good examples of some of the groups that we work with. There are plenty of others that we do, but those are the main ones that we work with on a regular basis.
Yeah, this business is really about networking and knowing the people that you're working around. Even though the groups that you mentioned, the EIs and the APPAs and the NRECAs and the other alphabet organizations that are out there, while we may all have different specific strategic objectives, there's a lot of overlap in what we do, and by banding together, it always helps to try to influence what's going on from a regulatory perspective. And I know there's tons of things that you and your team follows. When you look at all the issues going on from the agencies, from congressional perspective, it's impressive to me when you see the weekly updates go out from your team. And you see the laundry list of things that we're monitoring and chasing and trying to impact as they work their way through the DC mechanism, if you will. If you kind of narrowed it down, I know it's hard to do because we've all, my topic is the most important thing to me. But if you look across the landscape, what's the top 3 issues that you think that has the most impact and is taking up a good bit of your time and your team's time right now?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Rusty. Actually, as you know, you and I were actually going to the FCC and NTIA and talking about some of these issues with them. And so, yeah, it's, spectrum, pole attachments, broadband, and, to a certain extent, some related issues such as infrastructure security and cybersecurity. So, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily top 3, but yeah, in the grand scheme, those are the issues that we focus on. And there's some opportunities out there right now. For the longest time, we've been playing defense in terms of interference in the 6 gigahertz band. We're continuing to, fight on that front, but then also looking at potential other challenges, whether it's interference at 900 megahertz or other types of, potential challenges when it comes to access to some of the broadband funding. We're trying to clear the way for utilities to be able to use existing spectrum, but then in terms of opportunities, we're looking for chances to try and engage with NTIA when it comes to sharing federal spectrum. And one of the things that NTIA is working on right now, together with the FCC, is a national spectrum strategy. And so, given that the federal government is starting to take a comprehensive look at how they make spectrum available, that gives us an opportunity to come in and present what I think basically a lot of the regulators aren't used to hearing, which is that utility communications is a really important issue. And it's not just, the folks that, commercial carriers that matter. It's having spectrum for private internal communications, where it's, the safe, reliable, and efficient delivery of energy and water services that also matters too. And so we're looking at some individual bands that may be available. I'll talk about them, just real quickly. On the federal side, there's 7125 to 8500 megahertz band that's, as I said, currently allocated for exclusive federal use, but as part of the national spectrum strategy, they're looking at making that available for non-federal users generally. Now, interestingly enough, some of the same folks that are using the 6 gigahertz band for unlicensed are also trying to get access to that 7 to 8 gigahertz band too. And at the same time, we're facing competition for access to that band from some of the commercial carriers as well that want to try and use it for licensed services. But I think that there's still an opportunity for utilities to be able to try and access some of that 7 to 8 gigahertz band. And then, that's going to help us out in terms of getting away from the interference in the 6 gigahertz band. And then more broadly, when we're talking about smart grid and having wide area situational awareness in the field area network, we're looking at another band in the federal range, at actually 2 segments in the 400 megahertz range, between 380 to 399, and 406 to 420. And so if we could be able to share that spectrum, which we think is underused, that would provide us the potential to try and do private LTE and then 5G using some of the same equipment and technologies that other utilities are using in other parts of the world. So in Europe, there are a lot of these 400 megahertz deployments. And more recently, we're seeing that now South American countries are making some of that spectrum available too. So we can try and leverage that, so that we can actually do some similar types of, quasi broadband type of internal communication networks for utilities going forward. And that would give us better capacity and provide wider area coverage that utilities need for grid modernization type of applications. And while I'm at it, there's, discussions going on, not just within the United States, but also in Canada with respect to the 1.8 gigahertz band. So as folks may be aware, that band was made available for utilities some time ago in Canada for grid type applications. And so we're also looking at trying to find ways that we might be able to access some of that spectrum in the United States. And that would actually promote opportunities that, would entail ecosystem and economies of scale in terms of the equipment that would be available. So there's some things that we can do there, not just within the United States, but globally. And so part of what we're focusing on there as well is going to the International Telecommunications Union, or ITU, as it's fondly referred to, and engaging with those folks to try and come up with a recommendation that would support a harmonized allocation of spectrum for utilities around the world. And so there's some cool things that we can do there. I'm focusing a lot on the spectrum piece. I realize I'm sort of, drilling down a little bit too far on that one, but I do want to just say that's kind of where our focus has been. While we've continued to try and support utilities in terms of their wireless needs, the other, important piece that we shouldn't lose, track of is, what utilities are doing on the broadband front. And so that's one of the issues that UTC has succeeded in leading at the FCC, and now at NTIA. There's also broadband funding that's being made available there. And also there are some number of states that are taking funding that was made available through the Treasury Department and allocating that at the state level. And so, there's a lot of opportunities, and what we're working on the broadband front is to try and make as much of the areas eligible for access to funding, and then streamline the process so that utilities don't have to go through a lot of bureaucracy and red tape to be able to get access to some of that funding. That's been successful. And some of the broadband mapping issues of the FCC now are getting improved. And we're working on trying to resolve some issues, I guess is the right way to put it, in terms of, making more of those areas that should be actually available for federal funding. And then on the pole attachment side, just to sort of round out some of the other issues that we're focusing on, we've got a notice of proposed rulemaking. We filed comments in that, where the FCC is looking at potential ways to remove obstacles in the FCC's view, so that as this broadband funding gets made available, the applicants that are awarded that funding can be able to deploy that much faster. So one of the concerns the FCC had was, poor replacements, and others, large orders. And so the FCC is looking at ways of, trying to streamline that process and make it more affordable for attaching entities. And also they're considering ways to allow folks to resort to self-help if, utilities aren't able to provide timely access according to some of the deadlines that the FCC already has established in terms of the regulations. So we're focusing in on that, trying to make sure the FCC understands that, we're fully supportive of broadband, but at the same time, we don't want to see folks taking shortcuts that may actually jeopardize, the reliability of critical infrastructure. So, I guess on the last related point, we are continuing to focus on reliability and resilience of critical infrastructure. As we're heading into the hurricane season, we need to be, aware that, there are things that we do in terms of preparation and recovery from some of these events that require us to have reliable communications. And so, and at the same time, there's some things that we do that I think the FCC especially needs to be aware of when it comes to, coordinating with commercial carriers and trying to restore service in the aftermath of some of these events. And so, that's been part of the overall messaging when it comes to the FCC, that, and to the federal government at large, which is, the utility ICT systems are part of the larger issue around national security. And then, to the extent that we can actually have, access to spectrum, for example, that will enable utilities to do more in terms of electric reliability and cybersecurity. And that will then pay dividends in terms of the national security and then also, energy reliability overall. So as we continue to try and go to the regulators, that's what we're trying to impart in terms of our messaging. So hopefully that wasn't too long.
Yeah, and that all interrelates to, all of that kind of weaves together. When you think about, trying to shape policy like, the issues that you just described and many more that you guys are working on, what's the hardest part of it? I mean, it's not like we go into a meeting with the FCC and state our case on a particular issue and they go, oh yeah, great. I think that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and do that. I mean, it doesn't happen that way. So what's the hardest challenge you think in this whole process?
Yeah, I guess, the hardest challenge is really making our issues a priority when it comes to some of the priorities of the FCC or at Congress. I haven't talked enough about that, but, I think, there are other competing interests that are pressing, the FCC and Congress for various different things that may or may not be consistent with our issues. And so, the biggest challenge is really, getting our message heard and actually making it a priority for those agencies, including DOE, to try and, advance some of these issues. So yeah, I mean, it's, not impossible. And in fact, actually, I think in some ways, times have changed where, people understand why it's important. And now it's just a matter of trying to find opportunities where they exist, where we can work together to, benefit utilities, but then also some of the other overarching policies that either the FCC or Congress are trying to promote. So good example of that is broadband. As I mentioned before, there are a lot of utilities that are out there providing broadband, and either it's last mile or middle mile. And there we find ourselves very much aligned with what the FCC and Congress and the states too are trying to do in terms of, remedying the digital divide. And so to the extent that we can, leverage that and create some additional opportunities for other issues like wireless that may be related to broadband, then all the better, right? Because then we're seeing each other aligned in terms of our overarching goals without necessarily having to go in and constantly complain, whether it's, to the FCC or Congress, about directions that the government is taking on some of these issues. So, to the extent that we can find solutions and common ground, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. Yeah, and we joke about it a lot when we're in the middle of this kind of process, that the federal government moves at glacial speeds, and there are times that probably gives them too much credit, but that's all kind of by design. But finding common ground, looking for ways that looking for the win-wins, as I like to say, gives us a better chance of being able to do it. And not every member, not every entity has got the same priority. And for us as an organization to be able to balance all that, I think is part of the challenge as well. So in a podcast like this, we can't cover everything that possible that you guys are working on and get to the level of detail that some people might want to hear. What's a way they can find out more about either this in totality or about a specific issue? If some of our membership or anybody that's listening to the podcast wants to know more, what can they do?
Sure. So most folks are probably aware, but we do have committees and divisions within UTC, and there's a public policy division that meets on a monthly basis, the third Thursday of every month at 3:00. So if folks want to try and engage, that's a good way of hearing what's going on, but then also, posing issues. So, our members are our eyes and ears to a certain extent, especially when it comes to activities at the state level. So we rely on our members to provide input, and so that way you can basically steer us in the right direction. And one of the things that we're also looking at doing in the near term is sending out a survey to make sure that we're addressing all the issues that our members, are concerned about. So that, that's another way that utilities that are interested in trying to, get engaged with UTC and support what we're doing can actually help provide some good direction when it comes to some of these issues. But yeah, as much as anything else, we look forward to, engagement with our members. And then also we put out various different newsletters and publications, including a week in review that provides members with an update. So if you aren't receiving any of those publications, reach out to anyone at UTC. And that way we can get you added to the list, and that'll keep you up to date in terms of the things that are going on.
Yeah. So there's lots of opportunities, like you mentioned, committee meetings that happen on a routine basis, surveys. I know we all feel like we've been surveyed to death, but in an organization like this, we need your feedback. So if you see surveys come out from UTC, we appreciate your feedback. And these publications, I know you're also revamping the website or that section of the web presence for UTC in how we communicate and get information out as well. But when we do talk to members, when we do get input, we always hear that this policymaking advocacy part of the organization is always one of the most important aspects of what we do. So, we want to continue to do what it is you want us to do. And we do appreciate what Brett and his team and, Eric and Campbell and Cordell and others that are part of the overall effort. We appreciate what they do. And you do a good job of wading through all the stuff and trying to keep all the balls in the air as we work through all of the litany of opportunities that are out there. So I appreciate all you and your team does, Brett.
Thank you, Rusty. And, I will say personally, coming to UTC from the carrier world, it's been a lot of fun. I've been at UTC for 25 years. And I continue to see new things and new opportunities. And I feel really positive in terms of the outlook going forward for UTC and for our members when it comes to some of these issues.
Yeah, and times change, technology changes, but the core issues are still there. So I appreciate everything, appreciate the information today. Well, that'll do it for this edition of the UTC podcast. I hope you'll continue to look for future editions. And if you've got any suggestions on someone you'd like to see be a part of this, please don't hesitate to send it along. I hope to see you again in the future.
Thank you for meeting us at the intersection. For more information about the Utilities Technology Council, visit utc.org.